and we raise threes. A little thin. If the people to your left are pretty good from middle position. We don't think that's the case. We think that guy Dewani is fairly poor, and we haven't seen this other guy at all, so we're fine with this. Bet 40. I might make it like 50, just because I think there's a lot of times where he calls the flop, maybe 55 where he calls the flop and then folds the turn. So with our range that's betting for value, we want to make a little more money, squeak a little more money out of that flop bet. And we're betting this flop. We're probably not expecting to just like bet once and shut down. So we want to put more money in there because we're going to expect to get more money back later. We bet twice. Sizing here on the river can get a little tricky. We're basically kind of hoping that he has like king 10. I don't expect to get called by like 8s and 9s on this river too often. Without knowing more about this player. Like, yeah, it kind of ran out so we could be bluffing. But I don't know how many, like from his perspective, I don't know how many folds he thinks we should expect by betting this turn. So that kind of strengthens our range. There's no flush draws that missed. So we're betting here, and he shoves, which is fun. I think this is a fold when he shoves. At first, I was like, you probably have to call. But if we look at how it ran out, like, the only way, like, first of all, he's tanking. And we're like, whenever anyone tank shoves, they have it. Which has caused me to start tank shoving bluffs and working really well against regulars at some medium stakes. And we snap it. And he has 10s. I kind of tried to show not what he had. But the problem is, like, he's not shoving 7-6. He's probably not even flatting 7-6. Yeah, he doesn't have 4-5, because he's probably not flatting that pre. He's 21-16. But he does have 7s, he does have 6s, and he has 10s. And then 8s and 9, the only thing you're really beating is a 10 turned into a bluff, which I think is pretty rare. I think he's probably either going to call it or fold, because like, he might be too scared of you just bet calling aces here on the river, which 3s and aces are pretty much the same thing outside of the fact that we block one combo of his sets that he could possibly have. No, well, I guess it's more than one combo. One iteration of hands, rather, by having the lowest set. But we have to look at how often is he doing that compared to calling 8-9 suited on the flop, calling 7s, calling 10s, or calling 6s, and then shoving the river. I think the problem is we could look at it and be like, well, would he really shove 6s here? I'm not sure. He might just call it because he might not expect to get called by worse too often. But the problem is the board's so dry and how he played it, and then the king hitting specifically on the river, he's going to think, okay, well, if I shove, it looks like I'm trying to get him off of ace-king, I'll do that. And I think that almost never means it's a bluff. So if we look at his pure value range here, is he shoving king 10? I don't know. I'm not sure if he's even flatting king 10 pre-flop. Probably not. And if he is, it has to be king 10 suited, and there's only 2 combos of that. So then we're looking at the combos of 7s, 6s, 10s, and then 8-9 suited, which far outweigh the king 10 suited, plus discounted for the fact he might not always shove it, plus the bluffs that he would be turning into bluffs here. So like his pocket 8s, his pocket 9s, a 10-9 type hand. If we add those both sides of the equation up and look at the odds we're getting, I think against most people who are playing like 21-16 and probably aren't, we're probably not just like terrified of playing out of position against Tirtal Lam. He's probably like decent. Against those type of players, I think this is probably a fold. Even though we're getting a pretty decent price, I just don't think people are bluffing enough here. And yeah, it sucks to fold like bottom set there, but if we're looking at like all the combos getting half-stub, and as we take in the note, which definitely love the note here, really take a ton of notes is always very, very preferable. And he says Hollywood tank shove river. I'll just read for the people that can't read. Apparently, that watch my videos. Hollywood's and tank shoves rivers with basically the nuts. So I think that's a great note to have. So that's a silver lining to that. But in retrospect, at first too, I thought it was like, oh yeah, I guess you got to call. He can just shoving king 10, but then you're like king 10, who's flatting that middle position, playing 21-16, and then you're also like, well, all of the hands he is flatting, he's shoving for value on the river, and they all beat us. So he'd have to be pretty tricky for that to be a call, I think.